Welcome to Performance Perspectives. I'm Dan Snyder, and today we're diving into customer engagement, one of my favorite topics, and how life science teams adapt, collaborate to meet evolving healthcare professional needs. Joining me today is Brian Washburn, VP of Sales at Sanofi. Brian, thanks for being here today. Maybe you could share a little bit more about your background and your current role at Sanofi for our audience.
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you a Cliff Note version, but I've been in the industry, pharmaceutical, either large or small biotech companies. I've done a little bit of consulting over the last 30 years. I've done everything from training and development to marketing to early stage development and commercialization up to and including business development deals in Pacific Asia, Europe, and here in the US. I'm currently the head of sales at Sanofi for the rare team. And that's where I reside now. And it's a great, great mission that we have with rare diseases.
That's a very comprehensive background, so thanks for sharing that. I'm just going to dive into the questions so we can sort of get your opinion and take on things. So you've been leading frontline teams for quite some time. How have you seen HCP engagement change over the years?
I've been in the industry since 1992. So the evolution that we've had since 1992 is pretty significant. Back in the day, it was carrying around phone books in the back of your car to actually find the physicians. Now, what we're doing years later is in order to find the physicians that are treating the patients, you do look at ICD-9, ICD-10 codes and other types of things that you would find in EHR to find the physicians, the specific physicians that are potentially treating the rare diseases or any type of disease that you potentially are looking for. So the advances that have happened, yeah, I mean, there's been a tectonic shift in regards to how things are done. And quite honestly, with AI, as long as you add the human into AI, I think it's going to continue to evolve and accelerate the way that we find and engage with find patients and engage with customers.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it seems to be in tune with what we're hearing quite a bit from our clients. With that evolution, those changes that you were speaking about, how have the healthcare professionals' needs and expectations changed along with it? And how has it, changed when it comes to interacting with them now?
It's interesting because I think, like anything, you have people that are early adopters and people that are laggards. I think some of the more experienced physicians that have been in practice for a longer period of time, some of them just don't have much patience for some of the new technologies that are coming out and what we're trying to do. However, a lot of the newer, more technically savvy physicians that are coming into the market are really expecting us to be able to help or really have conversations with them at a different level. And as long as you have tools and resources for both sets of those types of HCPs at this point, I think we're okay. And I think over time, you could see that we're going to shift to engaging customers in a way that's going to be palpable for everybody over time.
Yeah, you said that some of the expectations for maybe some of the newer healthcare professionals that are in the early years of practicing medicine have sort of elevated to a different level. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit?
Similarly to what I was just saying earlier with, you know, some of the ways that we're finding patients from a technology standpoint are things that some of the newer physicians are expecting us to do. They're hearing about the technology. They're realizing that there's a completely different way of searching and finding patients with potential type of diagnosis codes and other types of things. So I honestly think that with the newer physicians that we're seeing come out of school, instead of getting them to shift to the technology or understand the technology that we're using, these folks are actually starting to expect us to use the technology over time. And if you're not on the cutting edge of it now, then sometimes they think you're a little archaic and a little bit too old school. And there's just a completely different level of expectation from a customer standpoint as people are coming into healthcare.
So their expectations and the experience have evolved based on what their knowledge is with the advancements of technology and things that help supplement the conversation.
Yeah. So here's an example I would use too, Dan, is, you know, during COVID, there was a lot of people that weren't too keen on video visits. Now people are a lot more comfortable with it. When you think of the fact that post-COVID, are people still doing those types of visits? Absolutely. when you're talking about communicating with a physician from a manufacturing perspective, sometimes that was done via text messaging. Sometimes it was done via Zoom, exactly like,
Right.
all of us do now. And people have gotten so used to that through COVID that now they just expect it to be that way. And in some cases, they don't necessarily, um, need to see you in their office, but sometimes they do. And sometimes they're very comfortable just connecting quickly electronically now.
Got it. So the paradigm shift, which wasn't the norm, has become the norm for a lot of these HCPs.
I think so. And I think it's going to continue to move in that direction in the future.
I can see that. I'm just curious, what strategies, Brian, have you found most effective for maintaining engagement with healthcare professionals?
When everybody talks about omni-channel engagement, it really is omni-channel engagement. I mean, the strategies, I don't think we can get into every single one of them here, but I would say when you talk about surround sound and having omni-channel engagement with customers, it has to be across the spectrum. However that spectrum is for your organization or your specific HCP or patient set, I think that deems some consideration. Rare patients are going to be very different than somebody that potentially has asthma based upon their sociodemographics or demographic information that you have on them. So how you reach those individuals, whether or not they're HCPs or patients, can be variable. But omni-channel is something that everybody talks about, and it is something that I always just say, look, let's just make sure we consider to have surround sound around these customers so that we can continue to engage them. And you can see a shift as you start to segment the different types of physicians that are out there in regards to how you do that.
Yeah, so omnichannel has created sort of this ecosystem of both digital and live interactions where those touch points can come from a variety of different resources, correct?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. And so the importance of being able to harmonize that and not working within silos, I would imagine is probably something that the better companies and the more successful brands are learning much faster than the ones that are not.
Yeah, I think it's one, you have to be an early adopter and you have to be willing to fail. You have to be willing to say, okay, we tried it, it didn't work. That doesn't mean you go back to the old school ways of what you were doing. That means that you start to, you know, select and deselect things that you think might have worked and didn't. And the bottom line, and a lot of companies talk about this, is try things differently and fail fast, succeed early. And I think that's what people should do is in order to find that balance in regards to how you can get better engagement over time.
Yeah, I like that. Failing fast, I think, is a critical component of how fast the marketplace is evolving. Or as John Maxwell would say, failing forward. So I really like that, Brian. I'm curious though, can you tell us about a particularly successful focus or HCP engagement initiative that you were involved with or, that you led in your current capacity? What made it effective and, what lessons can the audience or others learn from it?
It's a great question. I mean, Dan, I don't want to give up any secret sauce here. I think as an organization, we do a really exceptional job in rare diseases because we've been in rare diseases for such a long period of time. I think that we have always been on the cutting edge of finding out and finding ways of getting hot leads for patients that are attached to physicians. That's about all I'll say about that because I
Sure.
think that there's just so much there that we've learned and kind of advanced by failing frequently, advancing the model and continuing to find patients. But most of it is related to how you're using technology and data in order to get to the patients or the physicians that are treating the patients faster. So if you talk across pharma industry, rare industry, life sciences industry, I think everybody talks about hot leads, but I think, as we look at it as how we do hot leads, it's extremely successful. It's a great way to make sure that we're engaging the right customers at the right time with the right discussion in regards to where the patient might be and how we can help. And there's a lot of those, but again, I think it's all about hot leads, quite honestly, at least in rare.
It sounds like that there is a continuous refinement and calibration as you learn along the way. As you're gaining more insights and you're failing fast and you're having success, there's this never-ending refinement and, like I said, recalibration. Is that fair to say?
I think if you're not doing that, Dan, over time, you're going to end up missing out. if you don't invest in it, if it doesn't work, it doesn't mean you stop investing. It means maybe you refine the investment or change the way that you're investing. Over time, maybe you can find synergies and some savings there. But the one thing that I would say is I wouldn't shy away from investing in some of these things to get the customer engagement where it's incredibly high. And you should expect that the first, second, and sometimes the third, fourth time, it's not going to work 100%. But if you get incremental improvement time after time with the investment, I think that and over the long term, you're going to win.
Yeah, I like that. Looking ahead, Brian, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, but as you sort of look across the future, what emerging trends do you think will have the biggest impact on healthcare professional engagement, say in like the next maybe 5 to 10 years? And then how should companies prepare for that?
It's such a good question, Dan. And there's so many white papers that will talk about this, predicting the future of pharma or the life science industry. The one area that I really think is important is, you know, you have commercial teams and you have medical teams, but there's never really a hybrid of those teams, right? There's nobody out there that has the credentials of a medical person, but the skill set of somebody that is in commercial. And, personally, I see how you intertwine those two positions to have one individual be able to do both of those things effectively could be a real game changer. Now, there's always compliance and there's always, who they report into. Do they report into medical or commercial, or where are they in the organizational structure? But I think that that has a lot of merit. The other area that I am super hot on, and I have been hot on for the last 5 years, but quite honestly, I don't think we see as much change as at least I would like, is, how are we really taking the health economic that we have in regards to products or diseases, treatment options, and really bringing those to people who are making formulary or health system decisions, right? I think the trifecta in a position is somebody that has the experience of a commercial person, the background of a medical or medical sales liaison, and also somebody that can talk about health economics and how a disease state or therapy could actually make a difference for a system. Because the bottom line, Dan, is over time, we want to have efficiency with the people that we're engaging with. We don't want 3, 4, 5, 10 people engaging with it. It's frustrating for customers. And quite honestly, we know that we definitely know that. But how do we make sure that we get all of the skill sets that are in these different positions in one role? And I see those three things being pulled together and really making a big difference in the future.
Yeah, you've probably seen this given your background and sort of the way that you're looking across the landscape, but I can tell you that working with some of our clients, that evolution that you're talking about, sort of heading into that optimal customer facing person is starting to move, but maybe not as quickly as you had hoped. I know I've worked with a couple clients where they now have what they call medical value liaisons. So they're still under the medical arm. Their purpose is exactly what you described. It's going in and having those economic discussions and impact and being able to show value that way as well. So I love that notion. I think we're heading in that direction. It's going to be interesting to see how that sort of forms and shapes over the next 5 years or so.
I would agree, Dan. I mean, listen, if you look at FDAMA Section 114, right? Do people really, are organizations really leveraging that the way that they legally can, right? Based upon what the government puts out in front of us? I don't really think so. I think we have a lot of work to do in that
Yeah.
specific area, but that means we need the data, the people who know how to use the data, specifically with who, so that it is compliant and effective for customers. So there's so much there to unpack. We could probably just do a completely different, just one segment on how to advance that in the future.
Absolutely. And maybe that's something we can address later on down the road. I'm going to shift gears for a little bit right now. And I really want to go back to this notion that you were speaking about, specifically about creating alignment within cross functional teams and its importance in building better and more effective healthcare professional relationships and engagements. So, Brian, in your role or the roles that you've had, how have you approached successfully breaking down silos between teams that may appear on the surface to have different priorities when it comes to healthcare professional engagement?
I think, and I'll use a couple different examples.
Sure.
Um, when I was in a very small biotech company, doing early stage commercialization and really helping the scientific team figure out which molecules we were going to pull off the bench to put into studies and start looking at. Working and aligning cross functionally with the scientists in that type of organization was somewhat challenging because some of the scientists that I was working with were so passionate and so academic in regards to why they wanted to pull a molecule off the bench and start to put it into clinical trials. But the bottom line is that there wasn't necessarily a market for it. So, you know, aligning with my clinical and medical team in that type of situation was much different than what you might do in a larger organization because people have an understanding of what needs to be done or what some of the implications are down the road for commercialization. But that to me, Dan, is a great example and a really difficult example. But what I had to do is really make sure that you're taking these incredibly brilliant scientific individuals and getting them to understand that the way the patients and the markets are gonna work in the United States may or may not work to their advantage, right? So you really have to spend a lot of time and get people to have just a tectonic shift in their thinking in regards to it can't just be about because this is clinically interesting, which a lot of stuff is clinically interesting. But then is it clinically interesting, and can we get this to market and actually have it impact patients? So that's one example with small organizations. In large organizations, sometimes it's a lot easier. Currently, where I am right now, I think we have an incredible medical team. I think we have an incredible patient services team. I think we have an incredible marketing and sales team. Everybody gets rare. Everybody understands what their part is within helping patients, but sometimes alignment is needed. I'll give you an example, at least, with where I am now. You know, I push for health economics. Why do we have all this great health economic data and what are we doing with it? And sometimes people are like, well, that's not what we do. We don't do it in commercial. We don't do it in patient services. We don't do it in medical. And my response is then how are we going to do it? Because this information could be incredibly valuable to customers to help them make decisions in regards to what patients and how they're going to treat. And now that there's more competition for them to consider, that could be really, really, really impactful. So currently, even within a larger organization, I do find myself having those types of conversations with people, and it still takes time to get people to realize that it has to land somewhere and realize it could land in any one of our, labs to actually work on it in a collaborative setting.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. Seeing the bigger picture and making sure that everyone is aligned to that bigger picture and the role or function and what they do plays into that, I think is what you're describing there. This environment, this ecosystem that we've been talking about, you've had to harmonize it in your role and previous roles. Are there any particular strategies that you've found more effective for fostering a culture of collaboration or collaborative healthcare professional engagement across these diverse teams?
One strategy that's really important is understanding that no matter where you sit in an organization, if it's commercial, patient services, medical, health economics, market access, there are firewalls, right? I mean, you can't have conversations with a medical person in the room if you're on the commercial side of the business. That's just one example. Or if patient services is having a conversation with a patient, commercial or medical shouldn't be in the room, right? There's all sorts of ways that we can maintain compliance within what we do. But the one thing that I think can improve customer engagement is instead of working in silos and saying, I can't tell you what conversation I had with Dr. Schneider, that's fine. Maybe you shouldn't do that. But there's nothing wrong with updating each other with what each group has done in a system, in an account, in order to improve customer engagement. It's important to make this differentiation too, Dan, is it's fine to let people know what you're doing as long as the other party doesn't believe that they should be doing that job, right? So if I'm in, patient services and I say, this is what I'm doing within this account, that doesn't mean as the commercial person, you go to the customer and you say, this is what we're doing in patient services for you. You let patient services manage that. So I think sharing strategies across cross-functional groups is always important. And then, this is the other part of it that I think is well within bounds, is just making sure that, somewhere within the organization, somebody is holding each group accountable to making sure that they're getting it done. And I'm not saying commercial should hold medical accountable or medical should hold commercial accountable. I'm saying somebody somewhere in the organization that's above all of it has an opportunity to say, this is how everybody's accountable to doing and executing the strategies and communicating the strategies without doing each other's job so that it can be compliant, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. You
Yeah.
you need somebody that has the ability to look across all the fences in the organization to make sure that there is that harmony aspect of it to the best of your ability and staying in safe harbor, not putting anybody at risk.
The number one thing that is important when you start talking about cross collaboration and alignment, it's trust, honesty, and respect. Do you trust each other? Do you respect each other? Do you really have a relationship that is good so that you know that when somebody says that they're going to do something, that they're going to do it? And you don't have to follow up and ask, hey, did you do this? You know that that's what they said that they were going to do, and they did it, and you don't have to take any action on it. That is the magic of what I would consider to improve customer engagement and cross-functional collaboration.
Because at the end of the day, my belief is, Brian, and I don't know about your experience, but I really believe that, either consciously or unconsciously, if there's great alignment, the healthcare professional can sense it. They know that it's there. Like their experience, they can feel it. They may not be able to describe it effectively, but they can certainly see and feel that experience of harmony when a team is doing exactly what you described. Conversely, I think that they can feel and experience the opposite and know that there is confusion and competing priorities and that they're not on the same page. And I've experienced it, but I feel like physicians are pretty in tune with that, depending on the degree of interactions that each company has with their key healthcare professionals.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything like that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, all the time, I think we see it, and quite honestly, I think from if you look at it from a customer's perspective, to your point, I think they can sniff it out very quickly. If my medical colleague was in at 10 a.m. and I now have an appointment at 1 o'clock, and the customer says to me, "Oh, I just saw your medical colleague," and I have a blank face, like I had no idea that they were there. Those are just some of the basics, right? I mean, that's just communicating to make sure that we know what each other is even doing from a calendar standpoint. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing not compliant with that or anything else. But when you get in front of a customer and you repeatedly look like that across multiple functional areas, whether or not it's patient services, medical, sales, market access that are interacting with the customer, they literally can sniff out whether or not you guys are whether or not the team is tied together or not very quickly.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I often contend that every company and every brand is striving for this nirvana of differentiation. Like this is why we're different than other options or pathways that you have at your fingertips. I would offer up, and I would love your opinion on this, is that I think differentiation starts with their experience and especially the customer facing people, because until they get clinical confidence, they may or may not be able to reach that moment of differentiation and what the brand or the product can do for their patients, for their practice, all of those things. But I think differentiation starts with the experience.
I do too, Dan. And I'm not disagreeing. It does start with the experience, but I think the experience is going to evolve with customers, right? It may not be me interacting with Dan from medical, Brian from commercial. The experience may be me going to a portal that I'm approved to go into from a customer standpoint and have access to, where I can go down any path with commercial, medical, market access, patient information, discounts, contracting that I can actually go through myself, right? So this is the reason why I think this is a really important point, Dan, is because, you know, back in the day, you'd get a package in the mail with furniture, and the first thing that you look for is the instruction book. Now, same exact furniture is not being sent without any instruction book. You might get a QR code that you can go onto YouTube and see how to put it together, or they're just intuitively, the manufacturers are knowing you are going to go to YouTube or find an electronic source in regards to how to put this piece of furniture together. And I would say that healthcare professionals are going to be very much the same way. We have to be able to say, if you want this information, this is the suite that we have based upon the need that you have. And it may not just be commercial, medical, market access, or patient related. You can get all of those things. And when you have a question, you can either double click into an electronic source to get the answer, or then you can talk to a live person to do that. And quite honestly, I think AI is going to take off. I think it's really going to help. This is a great example of how technology is wonderful, but you need to have a human on the end of it. I think that has massive potential in the future to really elevate the whole customer experience.
So medical IKEA could be a business concept.
Maybe.
Brian, just another thing, you've talked about this a couple of times, and I really want to get a little bit more perspective from your experience and your success. How have you, as a leader, been able to balance the sometimes conflicting goals of different teams, right? You know, we've talked about commercial versus medical. How have you been able to sort of create that balance, especially as it relates to the experience and healthcare professional engagement efforts?
Yeah. And Dan, just to clarify, so are you saying across multiple sales functions, or are you saying across multiple functions across the organization?
Across multiple functions. Thanks for that clarity.
I would say it's just really important to talk about it, right? There's nothing wrong with having a discussion about what each group is doing. And if you have an overarching strategy for a brand or therapeutic area, everybody has to understand that. But then you have to also understand that there are sub strategies or micro strategies that people have to implement in order to be successful. And they may look a little different than what's in the strategic plan. And as long as it's all moving towards the right direction, I think it's absolutely fine. But in the discussions that you have with people, you can very easily sniff out and figure out whether or not you're completely off strategy in some areas, or they're executing a micro strategy that actually ladders to the main strategy. And that's where I think the discussions are important to have with groups, different functional leaders, and also making sure that you're all trusting each other and being honest with each other in regards to what you're makes a big difference.
I think that, you know, three words that jump to mind, and you've used all of them in one capacity or another here, is transparency, communication, and trust. And if you can foster that type of culture and environment, and then understand what everybody's role is in the roll up of the overall brand strategy, I think you probably avoid a lot of these conflicts.
I totally agree.
Thank you so much for your insights today. That brings us to the end of our time. I just want to thank you again for sharing your valuable insights and experiences with us today. We'd love to have you back at some point in time if you want to do it.
Yeah, thanks. Listen, there's a lot of different topics that we could really dive deep into. Always more than happy to do it with you guys, Dan. And you guys have a great organization. You guys have helped us do a lot of different things to really elevate our team. So I just want to say thank you as well. So appreciate you having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And to our viewers, if you found some actionable strategies to enhance your own healthcare professional engagement efforts, please like or subscribe and share our content. Remember, great engagement just isn't about individual efforts. It's about how well we work together across our organizations. Join us for our next Performance Perspectives, where we'll tackle another crucial topic on the minds of commercial leaders. Until then, I'm Dan Snyder. Keep innovating, and thanks for watching. If you like this content, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share.